This is John from All Points TV, and we're having Laura Felderbush come in today for a totally unrelated topic to she's ever been here prior, about a different topic. And you are all over the place, like I've said in your last interview. You do.
I'll take that as a compliment.
No, yeah, it's like and I think it's like some people would say what you're about to say is kind of like they don't understand why you're doing this. So you're a Republican who doesn't like Trump and who looks like he's going to probably be the nominee for the party. And there's a girl.
And not only don't like Trump, but I'm actually supporting Hillary.
Hillary. So
who again looks like she'll be the nominee if she's an official. Yeah.
And there's actually, I guess you could say you're in good company because I don't know if you knew this. You know who P.J. O'Rourke is? Do you know who he is?
I've heard his name a lot. I can't place his face, but I know he's one of the commentators.
Yeah, commentator, and he's a political pundit. He's a writer. He's wrote for several different magazines, including Rolling Stone. He was like their foreign correspondent back in the 80s. And he also wrote for the pornographic magazine back in the 70s, Screw magazine, Al Goldstein's publication. He also wrote for Car and Driver. He also sits in the chair of used to be one of the chairs for the H.L. Mencken chair for the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian think tank. So and he actually said the other day that he's going to back Hillary. So because over Trump, because he thinks he's too inflammatory. But anyway, we'll go on through the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. It's some people would say it's gutsy. I personally don't like Hillary for anything. But I like to hear your reasons. This is, and I'm going to be honest too, this is kind of like nails on the chalkboard for me to even hear this stuff, because I do not like Hillary. I don't like her, but I don't like Trump. I have real issues with Trump. I don't like any other ones. Well, let's hear the reasons why that you're supporting Hillary even though you are a Republican.
Okay, well, thank you for giving me this chance. I really appreciate it. And PJ, I think also the Koch brothers, as far as I know, I'm not sure if they're backing Hillary, but they did one of them made a statement that Hillary, to the effect that Hillary might be the better candidate of the two. I think their angle is that they're going to try to support conservatives, not in the presidential race, but in other races. But yeah, thank you. I guess for me the issue is, why would anyone support Trump? I just really see this guy as totally without any redeeming features. I think it's the people who do support him who should feel the need to explain themselves. But nonetheless, because I think that there are very few people who are publicly, Republicans who are supporting Hillary Clinton. I would like to be one of the few, who is doing that. And I think, Trump is just a disaster. He's an unmitigated disaster. We see that every day in the news. There's some new thing he's doing that's objectionable. Now he's saying that this judge can't be fair because he's a Mexican. He's not a Mexican. He's an American. But because he's of Mexican descent, that he can't be fair. And that's just totally un-American. America, you're supposed to, this is the land of opportunity. No matter what your heritage, you're supposed to be able to, be treated, the same as everybody else. That's blatantly racist. We could argue about what is racism. People use that word very flippantly these days. Like any criticism of Barack Obama is supposedly racist to some people. There are all kinds of frivolous charges of racism, but I think that the way that Donald Trump is treating this guy should be racist by anyone's definition, and you'd have to be the most, knee-jerk Trump supporter not to see it as racist. So, that's racist. I think he's basically just a nut. He's not a stable person. He does things that are just completely bizarre, like at a press conference, just pointing to a reporter and calling him sleazy, or having a Hispanic reporter physically ejected from a press conference. That those things are just nutty. Telling his supporters to punch people. People compare it to pro wrestling. Well, if you watch a pro wrestling match, that wouldn't give you license to punch someone. But in a pro wrestling match, even the performers don't turn to the audience and say, you in the audience, go punch your neighbor. If they did that, I'm sure they would be opening themselves up to all kinds of liability, but that's essentially what Trump is doing. So, I think he's a nut. And he's not a Republican. He's given massive donations to all kinds of liberals, including Hillary Clinton. So if you don't like Hillary, if you despise Hillary, well, this guy is one of her biggest donors. So, there's no way you should be voting for him either. And, he's definitely not a conservative. If you're a conservative, he said, "I love debt. We can always print more money." So I'm just shocked that someone like Sean Hannity, who's always preaching like fiscal responsibility, would be supporting him. No one who is for any kind of financial fiscal conservatism should be anywhere near this guy. He has a victim mentality. He's always saying the system is rigged. Anytime things don't go his way, it's because people are being unfair to him. He's not a conservative. He sees people in terms of race, like with this judge, as I just said. And he's just, he's not a gentleman. He calls women bimbos. Conservatives, I think, tend to, what does the word conservative mean? It means being very stable, predictable, disciplined, self-disciplined. He has no self-discipline. So I'm sorry, I guess I've been going on a long time, but does that give you some indication?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm just going to interject here. I read this older biography. It came out sometime in the late 80s, early 90s about Trump. Mm-hmm. And just since I haven't read the thing from cover to cover, I jumped around and, he said he's always been a lifelong Democrat. And he has always been, he gave money. I remember him in an interview saying, I think Bill Clinton's doing a tremendous job and all this. And then he comes back and he says that the reason why I say that is because, and there's probably some truth to this. I mean, it's like he's acknowledging basically the sleaziness of both him as well as being involved in politics and being in business. He said basically you have to play this political game. You have to butter up both sides to get what you want. And that just shows, I mean, to me, that's kind of a glaring example of what's wrong with this country is we know that and we permit it to go on. We permit this. There's no real room for real, true, hardcore ethics or a political thing based upon some kind of ideology that has any kind of merit. It's basically opportunism. Opportunism is the motivator.
Well, two things I would say about that. For one thing, what does that say about him if he is giving money to someone that he claims to completely disagree with, but he's giving them massive donations? I don't think most of the people watching this broadcast would be giving massive donations to people they totally disagree with. Or if he does agree with them, then it's dishonest for him to say that he didn't agree with them. And I'm sorry, I forgot my other point. I'm sure it'll come back to me.
Well, I can see I'm posting on Facebook that you are, vehemently against Trump. I mean, there's like you post stuff that's from, other postings that people have posted that are, relevant to Trump and how disingenuous he really is, how much of a fake, and I see he's a sleazeball. I mean, I say that. I mean, but then again, I see Hillary and everybody else as sleazeballs too. I mean, I have no respect for these people. They have no respect for us. Mm-hmm. And some people do say, well, he says what's on his mind. I like some of that. Okay, we all want to hear honesty and candor, but he just seems for a person who is so highly placed. He just in a high place society and made so much money. Doesn't seem to have some kind of discipline that you and I, as a person in the trenches who actually just struggle each day to make ends meet, has to possess.
Right.
And I think that's, I think to have a civil society, you have to have the kind of expectation across the board for some civility.
Right.
And even if and let's face it, we all know that we don't say what's always on the tip of our brain, in the response. But he seems to not able to. But then again, I've seen Bush do this. I didn't see Bush do it. I didn't like Bush, but he didn't seem to have the knee-jerk reaction thing that Bush has. But I also see, not Bush, but Trump has. But also, I've seen some of that anger and that hostility come out in Hillary. I've seen it in Bill Clinton. I've seen it in Obama. They have this, and I think, I hate to say this, but I think we should expect a little bit more from the people who are supposed to be our leaders. Okay, if they can't handle it, they should simply get out. But you're right. So I don't like Trump, but then again, I also don't like Hillary. I don't like. Now somebody says to you, if they're a true GOP member, Ben Diehard, and see, the thing about go back to your background, you've actually came into the Republican Party from the far left.
Right. Yeah.
So who would you say was you're the person you would looked at as an idealization of what the GOP was about?
Well, actually, this is seems a similar situation to how I got into the GOP. I actually was, as you said, far left. I didn't really identify identify with the Democratic Party because they weren't far left enough for me. I saw them as being too militaristic. But then I supported John McCain in the election against Obama. I just thought McCain was more experienced, and he had a reputation for being willing to work with the Democrats. He had just sort of been, from a left-wing point of view, sort of one of the good Republicans. And, so I sort of liked him for that reason. And Obama just seemed like sort of a newbie. He was, sort of a new guy on the scene, and people just seemed to be rallying around him just in some euphoria to support the first black president. And it didn't seem like they were really looking at things very analytically. And, so I got involved in the John McCain campaign. And sort of the more involved I got, the more passionately I became sort of glued to the Republican side of things, and I thought the Democrats were very unfair to him. Using a Donald Trump term, very unfair. Yeah, but I just became much more allied with the Republicans and more alienated from the Democrats. And in this situation, it seems like kind of a similar thing. Like I'm feeling right now, I'm alienated from the Republicans who are supporting this guy who is a creep as far as I'm concerned, and I'm finding myself listening to people like Rachel Maddow, who I haven't listened to in years, and people on the left like that who are telling the truth about Trump. So,
yeah, it's like, see, some people I know are diehard GOP members. I have a lot of respect for the old GOP. I really do. I think they're much more. I'll say this on record. I look at the historical scandals that the both parties have been involved with, and I would say the Democrats have far more to answer to and have far more things to be embarrassed by than the GOP did. Okay, their leadership. What happens is, my observation is that and I've talked to this with people who are leaders of the Democratic Party, and they kind of agreed with me. I don't know if they do it on video or in public, but the Democrats seem to need like a hero. They always want a hero. They want someone to idealize. And
that's sort of what the Republicans are doing right now. They're rallying behind this guy, or at least many Republicans, who they see as a hero. And it's, I'm sorry I interrupted you with that.
No. This is. I invite you to come here to talk about this. I definitely see. It's a moral dilemma for me because I don't like Hillary. I don't like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders to me is so far out there in La La Land, especially given. Okay, everybody says we could do all things that he wants to do if we cut back on the military. That's not going to happen. Even with Bernie Sanders in power, that seems to be out of our hands. I'm serious, and I'm not trying to say we should resign ourselves to that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're... Oh.
Yeah, go on.
I'm glad that you brought up the military, because that's another thing I think where I think people are rallying behind Trump without really thinking about, because he has all this stuff, America first. But if you look at some of the things he says about foreign policy, he would actually be retreating from the world and making us weaker. He wants us to have fewer military commitments and have the other countries defending themselves more instead of relying on us and other countries with nuclear weapons. And it seems to me like that would be making us not the world's leading superpower. We would just be one country out of many, and someone would certainly be stepping up to fill that void. Someone like maybe China, which Trump is always, railing against, but he would actually be enabling China and Russia to fill the void where America would leave. And I think that's very dangerous. I think Hillary is much stronger on national defense and international issues than Trump. I think she is much more of a true, America as a leader, world leader kind of candidate.
Well, I can say she's had more experience in the realm of national and international politics. But I cannot say that she's had all that much success. Although Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State under Nixon's, administration, said that she was more successful than he was. Which, I think Kissinger is an appalling individual. I really do. I think. I'm a strong American. I look at back I'd like to harken back to the time when the GOP was. I have no problem saying I like some isolationist principles. Now it's too hard to go back to that position after being in the forefront and everybody expecting so much from us. But at some point, I think maybe there is a point where we got to back off and take care of America's problems first and let some things go. We have military in so many nations across the world. We have military bases in God knows how many countries. I've seen varying statistics, but I think that's definitely that money is going to support the staff there, our people on the ground there, and that's a lot of money. And we could do a lot of things domestically. I don't really like the social welfare programs, but I'd rather have the money being spent in the United States internally than I would being spent abroad on foreign invasions and nation building. So it's a hard walk to do, though.
Yeah,
because we
that's
involved
true.
ourselves to so much.
Yeah, we don't want to be doing frivolous invasions, or for sure. But I guess I think we do need to have a very strong international military presence. Otherwise, as I said, there will be a power void, and someone, infinitely worse is going to step up to fill it. But getting into wars frivolously is a really, that's a terrible thing for humanity. I mean, war is hell, and we don't want to be engaging unnecessary wars. And of course, all that kind of thing brings us to Benghazi, which is one of Hillary Clinton's big. It's everyone who dislikes Hillary is going to bring up Benghazi, and I guess a few things I would say about that is. One thing, she was an underling in the Obama administration, and we don't really know what went on in that administration. We don't really know for sure which decisions were made by Hillary and which decisions were made by somebody else, someone higher up. And I don't know how many of you remember this, but the Hillary versus Obama primary was a brutal one. They really. Hated each other and engaged in, one of my friends in the Democrats for McCain campaign, she was the first one who told me about things about Obama that, she was always telling me about how his supporters were unfairly, sort of packing into some of these caucuses or primaries, people who weren't really eligible to vote were being, busted into, sort of thuggery, people intimidating people from voting. There was just a lot of, sort of illegal or unethical things going on, according to her. And, it was really a kind of, I don't know, maybe Obama's people would say similar things about the Hillary campaign. I don't know, but whatever the truth of it is, it was, they weren't good friends. They really, not at all. And so, so she ended up being Obama's Secretary of State, but we have no reason to assume that she agreed with things he did. And, the whole time she was Secretary of State, she looked to me like she was under duress. I mean, can you show any pictures of her smiling and looking very radiant or joyful when she was Secretary of State? I don't think you can. And, so I don't think that she was a happy camper while she worked for him. And so, maybe... any bad decisions that were made, we don't really know who made those decisions. Also, if there were some things that she could say in her defense, like at the Benghazi trials, she wouldn't have been able to defend herself because there are national security issues at stake. I'm sure she wouldn't be able to give any, really, really open and straightforward answers of what went on and why she did some of the things she did or didn't do things she did. And then the third thing is, I think someone who has some foreign policy experience, even problematic experience, is better than, is more to be trusted than someone with zero foreign policy experience, which is Trump. I mean, why should we assume that he would have, even the most minimal kind of knowledge about what to do in foreign policy? It seems like, even as a presidential candidate, he's going around alienating all our allies, like Israel and Japan and Britain. I think those are countries that he's already alienated. It's so that's the way I see things.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically Trump, in my opinion, is, and let's face it, I'm gonna because Gary Johnson just announced that he's going to be running, and he's. Basically, if you use the analogy of if anybody knows about the TULIP acronym for the Calvinist, doctrine of theology, if you're to use that kind of comparison to Gary Johnson and the Libertarian Party platform, he's probably, if you talk about the 5 points of the TULIP for Calvinism, I'd have to say for the Libertarian camp for Gary Johnson, he's probably a 2-pointer, out of 5 or 10 points. I mean, my opinion. And so he's basically somebody I'd still have to hold my nose to vote for as a Libertarian, because I just simply don't have that much respect for him. I really don't. I mean, I don't think he was a governor of New Mexico. Yippee. Okay. And I look at Donald Trump. I mean, he did. Okay, people say he didn't have personal bankruptcies. Okay, no, but he's part of the problem. Okay, the part of the problem is everything that's those bankruptcies, especially in that large scale that he does when a corporation goes bankrupt. Those expenses are passed on to somebody else. Okay, somebody sums. I mean, yes, but then again, you have to also measure that the way the Federal Reserve System is and the banking system is, that's so corrupt. It basically puts us on the hook, us as taxpayers, to subsidize very bad ideas that might fail. And now we're on the hook to pay for those bad ideas.
Right.
So, I mean, so the Federal Reserve System, something's got to be checked. I mean, really addressed, but it won't because the political connections and the money that's involved, if you actually suggest that, you're going to be vilified by the major press as a whack job if you don't want to address those issues. So, I mean, and so, but the thing is, one thing that Trump has made, if somebody's actually good at reading between the lines, that there is this corruption going on. There's this totally corrupted, perverted system that should never have been put in place. And he was basically trying to say, and I'm not making sympathy, I don't have sympathy for him. You know, I mean, he's a multi-billionaire, so, but he's basically acknowledging a real fact. I mean, a very basic fact. And there's this corruption that goes on. Everybody wants job creation, but they want to vilify the job creation. As soon as you get a job, everybody turns around and hates the person that gave them the job. I mean, but you got to have risk. I mean, there's going to be risk for any kind of business, especially with the foreign competition we face. So, I mean, he's acknowledging that, even though he should address that as in a very non-inflammatory way. And he should. And see, he has this immaturity that I find appalling and terrifying. But I don't see Hillary ever doing anything in her life other than marrying Bill. And as somewhat of a mediocre role as being the Secretary of State, I don't see her do anything significant on her own. I can't fathom people say, well, it's time for a woman.
That's a weak argument. That's not an argument that I'm certainly not going to use that argument. Well, she was a senator, though, and she was a Secretary of State, and now she's a candidate, and we can just examine how disciplined she was in any of those roles, what her temperament was. And we don't have Donald Trump being a senator or a Secretary of State, but we can observe his performance as a candidate, and we see him having none of the necessary restraint or temperament necessary. And one of the things that you brought up just now was third-party candidates, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. A lot of people who are Republicans or conservatives are looking to maybe a third-party candidate or sort of the Never Trump campaign, which maybe doesn't necessarily endorse a third party, but they're just not going to vote in the presidential race. And I don't really see any of those as a satisfactory option. I think if you're not voting, it doesn't matter if you're not voting because you don't like either of the candidates or because you're just too ignorant to know what's going on, or if you're not voting because you don't care about your country. I mean, I think that not voting, I don't see that as a virtuous thing to do. I mean, you have a chance to vote and make a difference, and you're deciding not to. And I really don't think there's any plausible argument to say that Hillary Clinton is just as bad as Donald Trump. I mean, she isn't. And there's this, voting third party. Well, okay, you might feel good about that, but it's, your third party candidate is not going to win the election. I'm sorry to break that news to you. They're just not going to win, no matter how much you like them. And so the only thing you're going to be doing is taking votes away from one of the other two candidates. And you really have to decide which of the two candidates you would like to win the election, because one of them is going to win, and it's just living in la la land to assume that they're not. That's something, So make up your mind which of those two you like more or dislike less, as if one way or the other. It just really amazes me, all these people in this Never Trump. I'm Facebook friends with a lot of them, so I see all their posts. One horrible thing that Donald Trump does after another, but they still can't bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton, and I just see that as totally absurd. Because even if you don't like her, she's at least she's fit to be president. Like, she's mentally fit. She's she's a Democrat, obviously, but you're not claiming to agree with her. If you're a Republican, she's not going to be the head of your party. You're the opposition party. So it goes without saying that you don't agree with her positions. I don't agree with her positions. I'm pro-life. I'm certainly not thrilled to be supporting a pro-abortion candidate. I'm not happy that she's supporting the Iran deal either. Maybe that's because she worked in the Obama administration that she feels like she has to support it. But, I'm not happy with that. And I'm not happy with the things she says about climate change. But on the other hand, I'm a Republican, so I'm not voting for her to be the head of my party, But I do think she would be a better president, nonetheless. I mean, she's been in public office. She's she's been a public servant. I don't see Donald Trump ever being a public servant because he's incapable of serving anyone but himself. I mean, we see even as a candidate, he just uses his position to get back at his personal enemies. He's always talking about things that are unfair, but it's always in terms of what's fair or unfair to him. He doesn't talk about any of the great injustices of the world. You don't see him concerned with fairness to anybody else, and you see him being very irresponsible, taking aim at these people, like this judge, or even Rosie O'Donnell. She's sort of a public figure, but just sort of taking aim at very specific individuals that he just doesn't like, and sort of putting them in danger, actually, because he doesn't know what some of his deranged fans or supporters might try to do to some of these people that he vilifies, tries to act like they're national enemies.
But recently, Bernie Sanders supporters attacked people in California. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if any candidate can be blamed or responsible for people. I mean, that's a problem. I mean, if we have a political system that says, well, that's bad candidate, encourage that. Well, yeah, he might encourage, or he or she might have encouraged it, but doesn't mean that we dismiss totally those people's actions who actually took it on themselves.
The people are certainly responsible for their actions, and I guess Sanders denounced what they did, and he probably should have denounced it more forcefully or more often or more publicly. But I don't think you can show any instance where he was personally urging them on to do things like that, and that's the difference, because you can point to numerous examples of Trump urging, either directly or indirectly urging them on to punch people, or just to, take these individuals and see them as enemies. He's very, like with this judge, if some of his supporters, it wouldn't be at all surprising if that judge is receiving death threats now. I think Megyn Kelly was receiving all kinds of threats. And if Trump at the beginning maybe was too irresponsible or just too ignorant to know that what he was doing might cause that kind of thing, he should certainly know now, because I think Megyn Kelly told him that she was getting that kind of reaction to what happened. But he continues to do it, so he just doesn't care. So I think that's the difference, is that he is directly urging people either to hate these specific individuals or to actually take violent physical action. Another example is he said, something like, if I don't win the convention, if I'm not nominated, there'll be riots, and he said that more than once. Like if he said just once, you could say, okay, well maybe it was just like a slip of the tongue or whatever. But he said it, multiple times, and I think that's an indirect threat, and that's very dangerous to have someone who would be president who does things like that. Like if this is what he's doing as a candidate, imagine what he would be doing if he had any real power to do things like that. As a Republican, we were always complaining about the Obama administration, which I think has been shown to target groups that it doesn't like through the IRS and multiple government agencies. And we've seen them do that, and just imagine what this guy would do, who publicly makes threats against people. I think he would do it like a million times more, and you might say, well, okay, but those he would target leftist groups, he would target groups that I don't like, or you might be thinking that, but that's not necessarily true. This guy is very thin-skinned. Even if his supporters, like Newt Gingrich the other day, criticized him, and he started saying that was unacceptable what Newt Gingrich did, or inappropriate, maybe was the word he used. But, if there's some Republican or conservative groups that are taking actions that are opposed to what Donald Trump is doing, if he feels like he's being opposed by someone, he's going to take aim at that group or that individual, even if they're a Republican, even if they're conservative. He doesn't stick to any ideology except his own self-interest, as far as I'm concerned.
See, and that's another thing is too. You struck up on, just as we got to kind of wrap this up because we wanted, but you struck up on a thing is like we can address on another show, but about the role of ideology. I mean, basically a set of principles and stuff like is good, but then again, if it becomes almost dogmatic to the point where you're ignoring other parts of ethical and moral considerations, but I usually find the left to be far more capable and willing to do those than I find on the right. But anyway, if there's any kind of more points, because I want to wrap this up before like 30 some minutes, because we have something planned too down the road to get another side in here, and I encourage people to come in here to pose it or give point by point of why they think you're wrong or whatever. So I hope you got thick skin. But anyway, so yeah, if there's any points you want to conclude with.
Yeah, I think there are some things that go beyond party. I mean, I think this just goes to basic human decency and caring about our country as a free country. We don't want to have a despot. We don't want some strong man in power who can't take criticism and will target you as an enemy. If you make the slightest criticism against him. I think there are enough reasons. This guy claims to love America, but he seems to hate all the people who make up America. He doesn't like women. He doesn't like Hispanics. He insults everyone. He insults people by category. He doesn't see them as individuals, but members of some category, and he insults the entire category. That's un-American, and this guy's just he's going to be a disaster. And he makes Republicans look bad. If you're a Republican, you just don't want to be anywhere near this guy, even if you agree with him on some issues. He makes you look bad by being with him. So. Do not vote for Trump. Vote for Hillary Clinton. Even if you don't like her, she's the only sane option at this point.
Well, I'd like to thank you and for coming in, because you came quite a ways. You come up from Ann Arbor area, and so and I'd like to encourage people who see this out on YouTube and on our channel, and also on Facebook. If you have points that you want to come to bolster Laurel's observations and claims and idea, please call and contact us. Or also you can if you want to oppose what she says. I mean, I think that she deserves respect, and I don't want to see people do personal attacks on Laurel for saying what she did. But I think we are All Points TV, and that's what I want to encourage. Because, like I said, hearing this case for Hillary is really hard for me, because I mean this is a very bad situation for America to be in, that we come down to three very, my opinion, very non-viable candidates. I mean, they've been tried and found not good for anything. I think they should be jettisoned. And out of 300 million people plus in this country, we come down to these three. That's pathetic. We have more job applications who are more viable for jobs at McDonald's and Burger King than we do for these people. And I mean, with the people we have currently running, in my opinion. So, but thanks again, and I encourage people to come back and, like I said, contact us to come in and do a show on pro or con to in opposition to Laurel or in support of. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who are we, and why are we here? No, this isn't a show about philosophical or theological epistemology.
I'm John.
And I'm John.
Today we're talking about the 2016 U.S. presidential race. We'll be sharing information and opinions to help you make a better decision in November.
Now, as of now, Democrats and Republicans haven't even held their conventions and don't officially have candidates. Hillary Clinton's all but absolutely guaranteed to be the Democrat, and Donald Trump is still at least 90 to 95% likely to be the, quote, Republican, end quote. Meanwhile, there are other candidates, and they are valid choices, especially if you don't honestly support Clinton or Trump.
So let's talk about that. By now you've seen the video advocating Republicans for Hillary. The very concept doesn't make sense. We know Hillary. We had 8 years of her as First Lady. We've had another 8 years of her as a Senator. And 4 years as Secretary of State. 20 years, 2 solid decades, before we even go back and look at the Arkansas years. Very few people who didn't like her before now are going to like her after all this. So you either believe what she says or you don't. You either agree with her or you don't. But there is honestly no reason for almost anyone but a party-loyal Democrat to vote for Hillary.
Now, let's look at Donald Trump. If ever anyone epitomized what it means to be a politician, this is the guy. By what standard is he Republican? Do we even know him? Know where he genuinely stands? What he believes? Or do we just know what he says and that's good enough for some people? He's the, quote, outsider, end quote, never been part of government. Not that holding office before is inherently good or bad. However, there are plenty of negatives about Trump. Plenty of reasons to not support him, and no need to go into all of them right now. We're not trying to win over actual Trump supporters, just reason with people who feel they must vote for him when they really don't want to. But wait, you say, if I don't vote for Hillary, then Trump will win, right? And if I don't vote for Trump, then Hillary will win, right? It's a two-party system.
Wrong.
Wrong.
And wrong.
First, let's look at the logic of those if-then statements. If not voting for either is the same as voting for the other, what about if I vote for neither? I can't possibly be supporting both by supporting neither, so they cancel out. Anyone telling you any differently is trying to scare you into voting their choice, not yours.
And yes, we do have a first past the post election system. But no, it's not a quote unquote two-party system. It's riddled with problems. And we desperately need legitimate election reform to empower those voters and take power away from the smoke and mirrors. But that's an entire topic for another day.
Right now, we have what we have, and what we have is the mere appearance of a two-party system. That's a really important distinction. The best summary on how that political power colludes to erode your choices is just to watch the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode from 1996, specifically the segment titled Citizen Kang.
The point is, there really are other parties out there, other candidates, and they do better in elections if people actually voted for them. Unfortunately, people use this self-fulfilling prophecy of defeatism, the circular logic in their voting. They say they won't vote for someone else because they can't win or won't win. Of course they can't win if people aren't voting for them. So these people are really saying they won't vote for someone because they can't win, because they won't vote for them. It's a total catch-22 in this situation.
Okay, now I won't say that the system is rigged exactly, but the deck is stacked. Republicans and Democrats are automatically in these so-called debates because they run them together. Until 1988, the League of Women Voters ran the debates between presidential candidates. Then Republicans and Democrats joined together to demand their own rules for the debates. The League wasn't going to take orders, so they left. And the Commission on Presidential Debates was born. It's a joint operation between the two largest parties to decide the terms of the debates and the criteria for even being included in the debates. Now, call me crazy, but a free and open society would want to hear from more than just two choices. I mean, you don't just have two types of cereal, two brands of cheese, two types of cars, etc., etc.
And Republicans and Democrats are more or less automatically on the ballots everywhere, no matter what. Other candidates, other parties, not so much in that. Each state has a different criteria for how a third party is allowed to be on a ballot. However, this criteria is usually by getting a certain percentage of the vote in the last general election. And it's usually the last presidential or governor, depending on what is going on at the time. But that is how these parties stay on ballots. And access is so important. You can't win a state if you're not on the ballot. And there's no chance at the state's electors.
Okay, now I'm going to have to disagree with you slightly here, John, because there's really no ambiguity about getting Republicans and Democrats on ballot. It's pretty much a done deal, shy of the most extreme unforeseen circumstances. Now, meanwhile, all the other parties are constantly refighting the same battles. Libertarians, Constitution Green, all of them. They're trying now to get on ballot in states that they were already on 4 years ago. They're seriously having to repeat the work over and over again. I mean, if that doesn't say perpetually screwed, I don't know what does. That said, let's just mention something more about electors while we have it, okay? The Electoral College is legitimate, necessary, and, again, a topic which could go on for at least an hour. So for now, let's set aside any ideas about a popular vote and what you think about electors. We don't have time to explain the problems with direct democracy, the intentional safeguards put in place against it. We have electors, it's how it is.
Right. So, unless or until the number of states, senators, or representatives change, the magic number of electors is going to be 270. There are a total of 539 electors, so the majority is just over half at 270.
So, which candidates are on enough ballots to even contest for 270 electors, much less win them?
Well, this year we've got at least 3 parties that are able to do something with this. First is going to be the Libertarian Party. They're on 33 state ballots right now, and they're fighting for access at another 14. The Green Party is the next party with a total of 21, and that includes the District of Columbia. They're in another 3 states as write-ins, and they're fighting for another 25 states to get on the ballot. The Constitution Party is on 18 states and fighting for another 22 ballots. Is this enough for any of them to get the total number of 270 electors that they need? Probably not, depending on the size of the state. They're going to need some larger states in there to be able to reach that 270 mark. Because if they have just the small states, it's not really going to be enough to push them over that mark.
See, now that's an important point about ballot access and electors. Because it is possible to be on ballot in most states, sweep all of those states, and still not get 270 electors, depending on which states they are, how small the population is, how few electors you get. I mean, as far as electors are concerned, it's more important to be on the bigger states than multiple smaller ones, although ironically it might be easier to actually win the smaller ones. That said, looking at the big picture of who's on ballot where, who actually has a chance at all for how many electors from which states, who's on more ballots, who could win the electors, your best bet's going to be Gary Johnson. Johnson and his running mate, William Weld, are both former governors, former Republican governors. But they left the party, say Republicans. We can't support that. No, the party left them first. Johnson and Weld fought against taxes, fought for personal liberty, and to keep government smaller. Meanwhile, the not-so-grand old party became a social activism, religious conversion machine. The ones who don't honestly advocate social policy pretend to do it just to get elected and have power. That's not pro-liberty. That's not really conservative, just barely socially conservative. Libertarians are fiscally conservative, and socially, it's my business, not yours.
So really, you have to ask yourselves, what's more important to me? Your party or your principles? Your ideals or winning? Is your focus on electing someone or just stopping someone else from being elected? Plenty of people, not just Democrats, supporting Bernie Sanders, only to have him turn around and support Hillary Clinton. What changed? Hillary hasn't changed. So why should they support her now? Because she's the Democrat? Because she's not Trump? Are those the lines that we draw when it comes to elections?
Now, if you think that's bad, the Republicans had ridiculously more candidates running. Right from the start, virtually all of them had plenty of harsh words about Donald Trump. Now, some of them have endorsed him. Some support him reluctantly, but they support him. If you supported literally any of the other Republican candidates, why did you support them? Do those reasons hold true with Donald Trump? If not, why support him now? Because he's the Republican? He's really not. Oh, because he's not Hillary. Neither is anyone else except for Hillary.
So why do you support Bernie Sanders? Why did you support Ted Cruz? Or even Rand Paul? Or Ben Carson? There must have been a reason. Is it that no longer important to you? Or is it now down to the same tired old fight of supporting one special interest group in order to stop a different special interest group? Because that's what parties are. They're special interest groups. When you support just anyone, so long as they have a specific party label attached to them, you're saying you don't care about details, just generalities. You're saying it's more important for your team to win than be respectable. You're treating your government like a sporting event, and not even a good one at that.
If you honestly believe in Bernie's government solutions to the country's problems, you could vote for Hillary. But if you also liked Bernie because he spoke his mind, wasn't part of the party's system, that'd be a mistake. What if you're also against war? against putting our military everywhere? What if you genuinely believe in marriage equality and legalizing at least some drugs? What if you believe in some personal liberty? Does that sound like Hillary? Does it sound like Trump? Voting for Jill Stein would make more sense than voting for Trump or Hillary. Jill's also on her way to being on ballot in half the states, though she's not there yet. You could also vote for Gary Johnson. Gary's against war, against corporate welfare and crony capitalism. He's also for marriage equality and legalizing marijuana. He's just not for more government programs, more government spending, and government's so-called solutions.
What if you're more of a Republican? Before Donald Trump got in the race, your biggest problem was probably Jeb Bush. He was a problem. Do you want less government? Are you fiscally conservative? Do you support the Constitution and individual rights? Then you can't vote for Trump, and you definitely can't vote for Hillary, because they're just going to take it away from you. Honestly, no one who genuinely calls themselves a Republican and believes in even the smallest fraction of a party platform could ever vote for Hillary. Not even just to not vote for Trump. It doesn't make sense, people.
Now, this may upset some, but social conservatives who believe in dictating morality through law, and you know who you are, there's some of you out there, would be better off voting for the Constitution Party. But even that's a mistake. Not just because it's wrong to force others to live by your standards, but because so far, the party's barely on ballot in fewer than 20 states, and its biggest electoral chances are Michigan and Florida. By the way, in Michigan, they're still on ballot as the U.S. Taxpayers Party, so you have to know what you're looking for. Or you could set aside your personal agendas of religion and morality and instead focus on what you have in common with other conservatives, even libertarians. You have the chance to make some progress here. It would be a mistake to throw it away because of particular details. Don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Consider the Overton window. Stop reaching beyond your grasp and vote for the change that is possible, that's within reach.
Now, we're not saying that Gary Johnson is perfect. No candidate is, ever. This is a chance for civil liberties and limited government. This is a chance to get control of the war machine and enact a better foreign policy. We can protect the rights of individuals and shut out the lobbyists. We can also get government and corporations out of the way and let the economy grow for everyone. No candidate will ever meet every point on your perfect candidate wish list. But there's still someone who checks off some of the big ones. If ever we had a time to give serious consideration outside of the two biggest political machines, this is it. The lesser of two evils is still evil. And this time, both the Democrats and the Republicans are despised by a lot of people. Don't make this about parties. Make it about tomorrow and moving forward and making things better.
Now, If you still don't think you can vote for Johnson Weld, then at least vote for Jill Stein or Darrell Castle or anyone else. But do not feel obligated to vote for Trump or Hillary. Make them prove themselves. Make them earn your vote. Don't just hand it over because you bought into fear or you feel beholden to a party and have to stop the other. They don't own you. They owe you.
And no party should ever own anyone. And there is a choice this time. You do have third parties that have real potential in making a splash in the electoral, the electoral college this year. The Libertarian Party is going to be your best bet in this one. If you don't like Trump and you don't like Hillary, Gary Johnson's a very good third party candidate this year. Thank you.
Thank you.